So this morning, I'm going to go over a few things. I've been, for the past, I would say 3.5 years, almost exactly, I have been talking about how the time of Israel's trouble has come to an end. Or, to put it another way, the time of Israel's tribulation is ended based upon the prophecy in Daniel 9. And I have proven, it's just using simple math, and today I think I'm going to do a short version that completely disproves the current narrative among Christians. But before I do this, what I want to do is talk a little bit about this so-called novel coronavirus, because I'm concerned that it might not be what they are claiming it is. And I want to talk about it and the timing of Donald Trump's release of his so-called peace plan of the century. And as you know, folks, you know that they have been threatening to release the peace plan of the century for, like, I don't know, close, at least a year. At least a year. And when the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his rival Benny Gantz started talking about annexation or unilateral annexation, then immediately here comes the Trump administration changing their minds about waiting and going ahead and releasing the plan. All right. So right here, the spread of this new coronavirus is being monitored by the Centers for Disease Control, the World Health Organization, and health organizations like Johns Hopkins across the globe. On January 30th, the World Health Organization declared the 2019 novel coronavirus outbreak a public health emergency. Let's go a little bit deeper into the background. 2019 novel coronavirus appeared in Wuhan, a city in China, in December of 2019. Although health officials are still tracing the exact source of this new corona, they know exactly where it came from. It came from their level 4 bioweapons lab in Wuhan, 2 miles away from where the outbreak occurred. But they're not going to tell you that. Some people who visited the market developed viral symptoms caused by 2019 coronavirus. A study that came out on January 25th, 2020, notes that the individual with the first reported case became ill on December the 1st, 2019, and had no link to the seafood market. So as you can see, the narrative of this so-called novel coronavirus, once again, I'm suspect as to what it really is, but the narrative is based upon falsehoods. So everything that you are hearing out of China concerning it from the authorities is a lie. You want to know the truth, you have to find it elsewhere. Okay. So look at the dates. So a man first became ill December the 1st. A study came out on January 25th, notes that the individual with the first reported case became ill on December the 1st and had no link to the seafood market. So now I want to show you something here. Donald Trump formally unveiled the peace plan at the White House conference alongside Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on January 28th, 2020. Is the timing of this coincidence? Is it really? Folks, for the past year, I've been saying on this YouTube channel that the peace plan of the century is a scam. It is a scam against not just Israel, but against Israel's Messiah. But I've been pointing this out, and I've been pointing out why. Here's what I'll do. I'll go to my bookmarks, and I will find this particular, if I can. It's down here. Right here. This map. See this map? This map, this right here in orange, is the land that the Balfour Declaration promised to the Jews as a homeland to the Jews. But what happened? What happened was the British reneged on their mandate, and then the mandate in 1947 was given to the United Nations after World War II, and they signed on to the British reneging on the promise to the Jews, and they divided his land, as written in Joel 3. Well, you know and I know that curses come with dividing the land, and then the peace plan of the century, lo and behold, has a map of Judea and Samaria and Gaza and places in the desert here going to Israel's enemies, the Philistines and the Moabites, the so-called Palestinians and the Jordanians. The folks here who are squatting on Judea and Samaria, they are not Philistines or Palestinians, they are Jordanians. They are squatters. They're enemies. And now the Trump administration is not only trying to cement the fraud that occurred after the British mandate, they're also claiming that they are for an undivided Jerusalem for Israel as their capital, but yet parts of East Jerusalem will go to the Fakestinians as their capital. That's double talk. I have pointed this out over and over again. So, now what we've got here is this. Now we've got further provocation from people who I had hoped would be the Friends of Israel, Jews, who appeared on the outward surface to be pro-Israel, but as I am finding out now, it is all a lie. And these people are now stepping over the line. I have refrained myself from criticizing people like Jared Kushner, this guy here, David Friedman, Avi Berkowitz, and others, but this has crossed the line. Tweets about Friedman, unilateral moves will endanger U.S. recognition of annexation. That's a threat. That's bullying. That's what that is. And if you are, as a Jew, if you're going to bully, if you're going to bully the Jews in Israel behind the coat of the Gentiles, what is Messiah or Moshiach going to say? when the day of reckoning comes about this. If Israel unilaterally moves to annex parts of the West Bank, as I have said before, it is obnoxious. No, it's racist. Yeah, I'm going to say it like that. It's racist to call Judea and Samaria the West Bank. Because Judea and Samaria denotes that the land belongs to Judah and the 12 tribes of Israel. You see, America may not recognize its sovereignty, U.S. Ambassador to Israel David Friedman warned on Sunday today. Well, is that how it's going to be? So now we're going to start issuing threats. Well, my answer to David Friedman, Avi Berkowitz, Jared Kushner, and to Donald Trump is Israel does not need your stinking support. The only support Israel needs is the promise given to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the days of old. The promises of the sure mercies of David, and the promises that were given to the prophets that Moshiach would cause all Israel to return into their lands, which include Judea and Samaria. So you guys are standing in the way of the kingdom of David. You're standing in the way. You're blocking the door. All right. So going back to this so as I'm pointing out here, this peace plan is a fraud. The Trump administration is cleverly and creatively doing everything that they possibly can to block Israel from annexing Judea and Samaria as they're supposed to. And as I pointed out, I believe it was in Isaiah or Jeremiah, that Israel is once again going to be feeding their flocks in Judea, or it says in Samaria, which also means Judea and Samaria. All right. So never forget this map, folks. The peace plan is predicated upon the fraud perpetrated upon the Jews when they were promised this chunk of land right here, and the Christians backtracked and chose to give it to their enemies, the Arabs, instead. 78% of it. And then you wonder why bad things happen to Christians. All right. So I need to point to a particular scripture that there's Luke 21, verse 25. Luke 21, verse 25. And as I'm going to point out in just a minute, just a reminder, as I have done this over and over and over and over again, and I'm not afraid to do it again. But we'll start in verse 20 of Luke 21. And when you shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies. All right. When Titus and Vespasian compassed Jerusalem with armies, and your history book shows this, isn't that what Yehoshua was talking about? Isn't it? Well, history says so, but mainstream Christianity says, I don't want to believe. I want to close my eyes to the truth. This is what mainstream Christianity does. They don't want to read their history books. And you can find this stuff on the History Channel concerning Vespasian and Titus besieging Jerusalem. You can find out that the rebellion started before 67, but the Romans came at 67, and they ended the war in 74, when the last vestiges of the rebellion, the revolt that Paul was talking about in Thessalonians, was finally put down. 7 years, the 1 week of Daniel 9. If the 1 week of Daniel 9 is over, even according to the false Christian narrative, then that means the time of Israel's redemption must begin shortly. See, I've used the truth that, look here, all you got to do, Titus the Roman general, watch this here. Sacked Jerusalem. Okay, there it is. See, this truth right here, that is written in history books, is proof that the 1 week of Daniel 9 and verse 27 is fulfilled. So when your preacher goes and says there's 1 week or a half a week left or whatever, no, absolutely false. The Romans came at 67, and halfway through the 7 sevens, not the 7 sevens, the 1 7, halfway through the 7 years, they broke through the walls, and the sanctuary was burning. It's common knowledge. But Christianity today has rejected that because they prefer their false narrative over truth. And they say that another temple has to be built so that it can be destroyed again. This is what they're saying. Absolutely false. Not true. This incident already occurred. So, and when you shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, that already happened. Know that its desolation is nigh. They say, no, it's not near. No, it didn't happen then. They're specifically arguing with the Messiah. He says, the minute you see the armies compassing Jerusalem, you know that its desolation is near. It's about ready to happen. They say no. So who are they listening to? They're obviously not listening to Yehoshua, which is what his name is. They're listening to Cyril of Jerusalem, a servant of false prophets. Then let them which are in Judea, yes, they were in Judea back in those days, flee to the mountains. Who is still forcing Israel to stay out of Judea and Samaria? Those same people who came to invade the Romans. So the Trump administration represents the Romans, trying to threaten them not to annex Judea and Samaria and say, if you annex Judea and Samaria, we're going to withhold support and let them which are in the midst depart out, and let them which are in the rural areas don't come back into. For these be the days of vengeance. But the Christians say, no, 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 the days of vengeance are still coming. Vengeance on who? Vengeance upon Jerusalem. Those were the days when Jerusalem was compassed with armies by Titus the Roman because of the Jewish revolt. The Jewish revolt was caused by the man of sin, Caligula. Satan entered into the heart of Caligula and caused Caligula to believe that he was Zeus or Jupiter. It was demon possession. And Caligula had his people placed in all the synagogues around in his realm, and ordered one to be placed in the temple of an idol of Zeus or Jupiter as himself. This is what the rebellion was all about. Not a great falling away. It was a rebellion. All you got to do is look in the Strong's Concordance and you'll find out. And yet they say that it is yet to come. Wow. Know that its desolation is not far away, but near. All right? These are the days of vengeance, not later on. Those were the days of Israel's tribulation. Not now, but back then. That all things which are written may be fulfilled. Yeah, woe unto them with child, and to them that give suck in those days. In what days? In the future? In the distant future? No. It was right around the corner. And there shall be great distress, necessity, constraint, compulsion. Okay, this is a different word than what I'm going to show in just a minute concerning the Gentiles. But they use the same word in English, or nearly the same word. Yes, they do use the same word in English for the next word, which is this word, sunochi. But I will continue. Great distress and wrath upon this people. And there was. But once Jerusalem got sacked a second time, there is no third time for Jerusalem to be sacked. There is none. Because in the prophets it says he's going to reward Jerusalem double. That means twice, only twice. There is no third time. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword. Read your history books. Did they fall by the edge of the sword or did they not? I dare you to answer the question. And if you answer all of these questions correctly, then you have no choice but to realize you've been lied to by your preacher. And they were led, and they shall be led captive into all the nations, all the Goi, all the ethnos means the Gentiles. Didn't it happen? Well, yes, it happened. History proves it happened. But answer it with your own conscience. Is the scripture telling you the truth, or are your preachers telling you the truth? The two cannot be telling you the truth. One of them is telling you a lie. Well, the scripture is the truth, folks. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles. So how many years has Jerusalem been trodden down by the Gentiles? Until the times of the Gentiles is finished. See that? Pleroo, pleroo, to make complete, to finish, fulfill. Kind of like an hourglass. Time, when you look at time as an hourglass, the time is fulfilled. When you look at a clock, you don't see it that way, but when you use an hourglass, the time is fulfilled. So when are the time of the Gentiles fulfilled? Well, you find it in Daniel 9. I'll go there in just a minute, but I'm going to go to this particular scripture here, and I want to show you something. Verse 25, and there shall be signs in the sun and in the moon. When? After the time of the Gentiles are fulfilled. Now, in the Matthew version of this, let me show you some. Matthew 24:26, it says immediately after. But I found out that this word immediately does not belong there. It's just connective. You see that? It's connective, like but or comma. Immediately is not the word. You see, a weak adversative particle generally placed second in the clause, but on the other hand. Immediately, you cannot find immediately anywhere in here. It is the Greek word for but. All right? So this has to be stricken. This word has to be stricken. But after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of heaven shall be shaken. But what's missing here in Matthew 24? We find it in Luke. Distress of nations. What does this word distress come from? Well, we first of all need to understand that Yehoshua the Messiah was speaking in the oldest form of Hebrew, Aramaic. All right. So this Greek word, sunoche, I discovered this yesterday. Okay, its usage is distress, anguish, anxiety. I've talked about this word before, but what I failed to do before yesterday was do this. And you see, holding together, distress, anguish, dismay. Well, what do you mean a holding together? Well, what does that mean? What is this? Something held together in close, hard tension. Tension from difficult circumstances that won't move or won't change, which produces distress and anguish, something that causes someone to feel locked in or tightly pressed. Okay. We need to go to the root word, suneko. All right. And here we have it, folks, right in front of our faces. To hold together, to hold fast, to be seized by illness. To press together close, pressed on every side, confined. Confined? When you have confined and you have sickness, you think of quarantine. Does that ring a bell? Sickness. All right? And there shall be signs in the sun and the moon and in the stars, and upon the earth a confining of sickness on the Gentiles. All right, so one could say, well, wait a minute, Henry, this sickness is already here, and the sign of the sun and the moon and the stars is not here yet. Actually, that's not true. We are anticipating this sickness coming upon Western civilization. It hasn't come upon Western civilization yet. It's only begun in China. Let me show you something. All right. So all you have to do is ask Google, where did the Black Death come from? You see that? How about it, folks? All right, let's look at this. Where did H1N1 come from, which is the Spanish flu? They say from Mexico. Wait a minute, folks. Oh no, that appeared in 2000. That was the first finding human beings in Mexico. But no. Hold on. So it was a swine flu. So, all right, hold on. Let's do this again. Okay, they say in Mexico. All right. Where did SARS come from? What country? You know, they're changing their... Well, I know that SARS came from China. The majority, not all, but majority of these afflictions come from China. But we all know that the bubonic plague or the Black Death came from China. But yet, the Christians in Europe saw this as a pestilence. And then, rather than repenting of their sins, they blamed it on the Jews. And then they started with the Valentine's Day massacre and began murdering Jews throughout all their countries in Europe, with the exception of Poland, I believe it was. So this illness is going to be already set in place when this occurs, is what this sentence is saying. Then there's it says perplexity, anxiety, and doubt, a state of quandary upon the whole earth. and the sea and the waves roaring, men hearts failing them for fear, and for looking after those things which are happening upon the earth. Now the word gar says for or indeed, express cause and explanation. Okay, so that word for is correct. Because the powers of heaven shall be shaken. So this distress right here, this illness, even though it says there shall be, that does not mean that the sun and signs in the sun and the moon and the stars happen first. It's happening while these people are ill. This illness has not seized Israel's enemies nations yet. Okay? And then after all of this, and then they shall see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. And when these things commence to come to pass, lift yourself up. Raise yourself up. Hang your head down no more. And lift up your heads, because your redemption draws near. Lift up your heads when sickness upon the nations is happening? Yes. Yes. You see, folks, as I have pointed out so many times before, and I'm afraid that I'm the only one that's doing this on YouTube. I'm not saying I'm the only one that knows this. Please do not misunderstand me on this. I'm afraid that I'm the only one that's pointing this out on YouTube. Go to Daniel 9. All right. Once again, in this particular section, Daniel 9 was praying for all the people of Israel, not just for Judah, but all of Israel, because he pointed out to Jehovah. Let's go to Strong's Concordance. He was pointing out to Jehovah, Elohim, and making his confession. And he was saying concerning the Jeremiah the prophet that he would accomplish 70 years on the desolation of Jerusalem. That was the first destruction. And he was reminding him that the 70 years was over. So I urge all of you who are listening to this video to go before Jehovah and do like Daniel did, and remind our Father in heaven that the 77s are finished. Do it. Just like Daniel did. How do you know that the 77s are finished? It's so easy. We go down here, verse 20. And while I was speaking and praying and confessing my sin and the sin of my people, Israel, and presenting my supplication before Jehovah for the holy mountain of my Elohim, for Jerusalem. While I was speaking in prayer, the man Daniel, whom I have seen in the vision at the beginning, when I was weary and faint, not caused to fly, when he was weary and faint, touched me about the time of the evening oblation, and he informed me and talked with me and said, O Daniel, I am now come forth to give you skill and understanding. At the beginning of your supplication, the commandment came forth, and I am come to show you, for you are greatly beloved. So all of those of you who know that the time of the Gentiles have come to an end, and it is time for the restoration of Israel. If you go before Jehovah with a supplication concerning Jerusalem and remind him that the time of Jacob's trouble is over, this will be said about you. You are greatly beloved, or Jehovah delights in you for this. So therefore understand the matter and consider the vision. 70 weeks are determined upon your people and upon the holy city to finish the transgression. Once the 70 weeks are over, the transgression is finished. Once the 70 weeks are over, it is the end of sins for Israel. Once the 70 weeks are over, it's time to make reconciliation, or it is appeasement time for iniquity. It is time to bring an everlasting righteous and to seal up the vision and the prophecy and re-anoint the holy place and the holy people. Everything that is holy. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem unto Messiah the Prince. Does it say Messiah the suffering servant? No, it does not. It says Messiah the Prince. Shall be 7 weeks. Let me ask you a question, folks. When was the call to rebuild Jerusalem? Be careful. Be careful. If you say 434 BC or some other number BCE, you're wrong. Because Nehemiah was told to build the street and the wall. You can look in the prophet Nehemiah, and you can get dates. I have dates. 445 BCE, Nehemiah asked permission to return to Jerusalem. In 444 BCE, Nehemiah returns to Jerusalem, and he became the governor. He became the governor, and Ezra was the high priest. The street and the wall was built in 52 days. After it was finished, and Nehemiah said, "My work is done here," he travels back to the king of Persia and he announces to him, "The street and the wall are finished." That was 434 BCE. You count that to 0 and you divide it by 7, you get 62 weeks, or 62 sevens. You cannot roll up the 7 weeks with the 62 weeks and call it 69. It doesn't work. Because right here it says, after 62 weeks, or after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off. Not after 62 weeks plus 7. It doesn't say that. It says, after 62 weeks, follow the instructions of Gabriel, not your lying preacher. Why? Because 62 weeks, the street shall be built again, and the wall in troublous times. 62 weeks has nothing to do with the rebuilding of Jerusalem. The rebuilding of Jerusalem is 7 sevens from the call, the commandment, the word to restore and build Jerusalem unto Messiah the Prince. 7 weeks, not 7 weeks plus 62 weeks. This should be a period right here. There is no and Here, there's no end there at all. The street and the wall was indeed built in troublous times by Nehemiah the prophet. You can do the date, you can find the dates, and you can get the exact numbers. The people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. Titus the Roman general did that. He was the prince. Why? Because Vespasian was emperor when he did it. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. That's with his legions, not with Israel. It doesn't say with Israel. It doesn't say with the Jews. With many. With abundance. He had a great military there besieging Jerusalem. And the plan was to besiege Jerusalem for 7 years. But Titus, as you know, lost control of his men because they were getting their asses handed to them. The Romans were, by the Jews. And they broke through. Titus was going to bring the temple to Rome in honor of Zeus, who Jesus is named after. Zeus is Satan. All right? And in the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease. So the siege began in 67. And then in the spring of 67, in late summer, when I say spring, I mean early spring, in the beginning of the year for the Jews, after 3.5 years, the temple was burning. The sacrifice and the oblations were caused to cease. And for the overspreading of abomination, he shall he made it desolate until it is consumed. It took them until 74, 7 years later, 7 years after the besiegement of Jerusalem, until the last vestiges of the rebellion was put out. On the citadel, I can't remember the name of it, where the last Jews had committed suicide. That 1 week is over. You can't make it happen again, Christians, although you want to. You can't make it happen again. All right? So the 77s are over. So now that's been proven to you that 77's over, you need to be like Daniel the prophet. You need to go pray to Jehovah, the Elohim of Israel, and remind him that Jerusalem's warfare is accomplished, that her sins, that of the promise that he would forgive the sins of all Israel and Jerusalem. And if you do, you will be beloved like Daniel. And he will literally send his angel to you, just like he did with Daniel, to watch over you, to bring you back to his sanctuary, while all of this pestilence and even worse is coming down the pike, folks. So as this pestilence gets closer, I'm going to keep on doing videos about this, but I want everybody to understand this particular passage and to never, ever, ever forget it. Folks, I'm afraid of this pestilence too, just like you. It scares me. Why? Because I'm made of flesh. That's why. If I weren't made of flesh, it wouldn't scare me. There shall be signs in the sun and in the moon and in the stars, and upon the earth a quarantining from sickness of the Gentiles. Now, before yesterday, I did not realize that's what this word meant. So I'm telling you today, I want you to look at that word. I want you to look at it carefully in Greek. But in order to do it, look at it carefully, you have to go to the origin of the word sonecho or soneko. To be pressed together, to be seized by illness. That's what it means. You've been told. Somebody on YouTube has told you. Now you know it's coming. Now you know you need to be prepared for it. But I urge every one of you, remember this. Remember what Daniel did. He reminded our Father in heaven that it's time to forgive the sins of Israel and Jerusalem. And remember what it says here. When these things shall come to pass in Luke 21 verse 28, then look up. Lift up your heads, because your redemption is near.